All right, so you're watching this video because you want to win arguments with your spouse. Well, actually, I'm here to tell you that you've already made a mistake, if that is the case, because if your goal is to beat them in an argument, you really have already gone in with the wrong mindset. But don't worry, of course, because in this video, I'm going to teach you how you can fight smarter rather than harder. Now, for those of you who are new here, I am, of course, Brad Browning, the so-called marriage geek, and I'm dedicated to helping people get the marriages they want and keep them. And of course, if you guys do like what I have to say in this video, please do me a big favor and subscribe so you can get notified of all my new videos. All right, let's dive straight into it. Now, follow these tips and you'll fight in a way that will bring you and your spouse closer together and actually help your marriage rather than having them hurt it. So first off, you really need to pick your battles. Now, I know this advice is sort of old as time, but don't fight just for the sake of fighting. You can win all the battles and you can still end up losing the war. Now, of course, we all know, those couples that squabble over every little thing. Believe it or not, those couples probably weren't always that way. At some point, they lost respect for one another over time, and now they let every little problem turn into a massive fight. And, the more you pick fights, the more your spouse will pick fights, until it becomes just basically a daily habit. And of course, it is a really tough habit to break. So, one way to prevent fights is to be really honest about what is actually upsetting you. Now, it's easy to fight about something, small to avoid bringing up a bigger, tough issue. But if you don't let your spouse know why you're upset, then you're never going to actually change that cycle of arguing and bickering. So, when you want to raise your voice or you want to snap back in anger, stop, take 3 deep breaths first. Think about what is really upsetting you. I mean, there really is a good chance that it has absolutely nothing to do with your husband or your wife. So don't, take it out on them. Marriage comes, with enough conflict on its own without adding more layers on top of that. Now, if you guys find that no matter what you do, you can't stop having huge fights with your spouse, and you're worried that you might be close to a breaking point in your marriage, then it is probably time to get outside help. Now, of course, the problem with marriage counseling is that it's really expensive, first of all, and not only that, generally both you and your spouse have to be willing to make an effort. My personal marriage coaching works a little differently than that. I offer a one-on-one approach that allows people to save their marriages, and it is completely confidential. So your spouse doesn't even really have to know you're even working with me. And of course, once you sign up for coaching, you can ask me any question you want via email, and I guarantee a response within 72 hours or less, usually less. So if you do want to sign up, go to marriageguy.com/coaching, and you can learn more about my coaching program. And of course, I should just mention that this does work, even if your spouse, isn't speaking to you, or if they've already told you it's over. Just sign up for coaching and we'll work on it together at marriageguy.com/coaching. All right, next up, let's talk about losing fights. You may feel like you're already losing every fight with your spouse. And quite frankly, they probably feel the same way. Now, the couples that have the most conflict are those where neither partner is willing to lose an argument. And neither partner will back down no matter what. Now, if that does sound like you and your marriage, then you really do need to rethink your approach. Now, you are showing your spouse that you care more about being right when you do that than you are about what you're actually fighting about in the first place. And that really means that they're never going to see your side of things because you're never willing to see their side. So really, just allow yourself to lose a fight now and then. If it's something that's not that important to you, give them a win. And actually apologize sincerely, and don't just walk around the house sulking. When your spouse sees that you're actually able to do that, they're going to be a lot more likely to do the same thing. And when you stand your ground, they're going to know that you're not just doing it out of pride alone. Now, I personally think one of the best ways to win an argument is by seeing both sides of the issue. So, if your spouse sees that you understand where they're coming from, even if you don't agree with them, then they're going to be more willing to compromise with you. Now, of course, this is why it's really important to actually listen actively to what your spouse is saying and to really consider their point of view. So let's just go into a quick scenario here. Imagine your spouse is angry that you never take out the garbage. Instead of telling them they're just dead wrong, you do way more housework than them, things like that. Say something like, "I can see that you're angry that I don't take the garbage out enough. I think I do plenty of other housework already, but if this is really important to you, then I'm willing to make the effort." Now, so you can see there how you've seen their side of the argument, and you've shown that you're open to changing your own behavior. Now, many people avoid this because they don't want to, give any ground at all up to their spouse. But if you notice, you haven't really had to apologize or let them win here. You've just addressed their concern, and really it's just as simple as that. Now, it's also important that you get to the real root of the issue. Often couples will fight about small things to avoid fighting or talking about the larger things that are what's really bothering them. And this is generally because, we worry about what will happen if we address the real underlying big problems in our relationship. So, when you use small little problems more often, it often just masks the big ones and causes confusion for both parties. Now, it may be easier to dance around an issue, but in the long run, the earlier you can address these fundamental problems, the stronger your partnership is going to be in the long run. So, with that in mind, before coming at your spouse with some, minor annoyance next time, take a deeper look and see if it's, part of a bigger pattern that you're actually really just responding to that you can't really recognize or haven't recognized up to this point. And another tip here, guys, when you're in a fight, try to avoid using the word you. If you can reframe your arguments to avoid using that word, the word you, then your fights are going to feel a lot less confrontational from your spouse's perspective. So, for example, instead of saying, "You never do the laundry," you could instead say, I don't think it's fair that I'm the only one who has to always do the laundry." And that little simple change of language can take a lot of the fire out of the fights even before they begin. Two other words you're going to want to avoid are never and always. These kinds of extreme black and white words are going to hurt your argument. And if you say, "You never listen to me," then it's pretty obvious that you're exaggerating. I suspect your spouse listens to you once in a while at least, right? And if they can just point out those 3 times when they've listened to you, that's going to destroy your argument. So instead, just say something like, "I wish that you would really listen to me and try to see my side of things a little more often." And when you use that kind of language, you're having a much different discussion about the exact same topic. Another sure way to keep things from escalating is to stay affectionate even while you're mad at your spouse or you're in a disagreement with them. When fights get really bad, you may respond by just sort of being cold or indifferent around your spouse. That's common. It's completely natural. But you should try to stay the kind and loving person that you generally are, even while you're arguing. And this is going to remind your spouse that you're on the same team at the end of the day, and that you still love them no matter what. Now, there will probably be times when you do need to spend a bit of time apart to sort of let things cool down. So if you find that one or both of you you keep bringing up the fight, then this might just be your cue to get some space from the situation and from your spouse just for a little while. Even a walk around the block can really help both of you think a lot more clearly and have a more rational discussion. Now, I also will say here that threats are going to get you absolutely nowhere. This is actually something that I see in my everyday work as a marriage coach. Men and women are often threaten their partner, with divorce over the smallest little provocations, and it generally always leads to, a huge fight as a result. So, avoid using the nuclear option unless you really mean it. If you say you're leaving your spouse over some dirty dishes, it's going to look like you don't value your marriage. Plus, of course, if you don't leave, then they're going to lose faith in the things that you're saying in the future. So generally, keep the conversation on topic and don't escalate. Now, if you find that you keep making the same point over and over, stop. Instead, try to use different words to say the same underlying thing. I know this might seem really silly, but even if it seems perfectly clear to you, changing up the language you're using can really help your spouse to understand what you're trying to get at. So if you say the same thing in several different ways during an argument, then you're a lot more likely to get the result you want and to have your spouse understand what you're saying. So here's a quick tip, actually, that real FBI hostage negotiators often use to get the best outcome in a crisis situation. And that's called mirroring. So basically, it's when you just say what your spouse is saying back to them in different words. So, if your spouse says, "We never go out anymore," then, in response, you can say, "Okay, so you're upset that I don't take you on dates enough?" Now, this might seem a little awkward or weird at first, but trust me when I say that they'll just be a lot happier when they recognize that you see their side. And this does show them that you're making an effort to understand what they're saying. Now, mirroring is also about body language. It's not just about your words. A lot of experts say that 93% of communication is nonverbal. So that means that, things like raising your voice, waving your arms around, pointing at your spouse, that kind of stuff is always going to make matters worse, no matter what words you're actually saying. So, don't yell, don't raise your voice, and never, imitate their voice or how they're saying things to try to hurt them when you're doing this kind of mirroring tactic. Now, if you do want to use it, if you want to mirror your spouse, what you need to do is basically just face your body towards them, uncross your arms, and show them sort of with your open body position that you're open to what they're saying and their ideas and their just general point of view. So try to mirror the way they're standing to create sort of a subconscious connection between the two of you. And that, I know it sounds dumb, but that is actually going to make it a lot more likely that they're going to see your side. If you find that you're the one who's always starting fights, next time, before you bring up a problem with your spouse, keep it inside your head and ask yourself these 3 things. 1, do they know how I feel about this? If you haven't made it clear to your spouse that whatever this thing is that you're upset about, that it's a real problem and something that really bothers you, then you need to start by just letting them know, right? Second question you need to ask yourself, can I live with this? If this is a kind of problem that you can live with, then you really just need to be willing to let the resentment go and to pick your battles, basically. So, this is the case where you know that it's something minor or it's something that just isn't really that important to you, but it is important to them. And so that's a perfect time to give them a win and just sort of let go of the problem in the first place and don't bring it up. Third question, can you actually change whatever the problem is and can you do that on your own without your spouse? If it is, something that you can fix without bringing your spouse into the whole discussion, then that is the best option, and you should go ahead and do that and solve it on your own and not cause conflict with your spouse over it. And if the answer to these questions is no, then you should, bring it up to your spouse, but make sure that you do so in a respectful manner and that you avoid raising your voice. Just tell them how their actions make you feel. Tell them clearly what you want them to do and why you want them to do it. And of course, listen to their response, hear them out, and keep your cool the entire time. All right, there you have it, guys. The next time you're about to explode with anger, take a deep breath and remember the tips that I've told you about in this video, and you're going to get what you want without making things into a bigger fight than it really needs to be. So that's it for this video. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.